From that moment, it started knocking in my mind like Cuba missing a good plate for breakfast.
Let's be honest, most people don't come to Cuba for the food. Yet a new gastronomic scene is emerging. Private restaurants are thriving, and the entrepreneurs behind them, well, they're facing a minefield of challenges every day. To understand what's behind the challenges and why the food business is unlike anywhere else on earth, we need to first see how Cuba eats. More specifically, how the state feeds its people.
It's about 11:30 p.m. We're in Havana Vieja, and we're going to go into the back of a state-run bread factory right now to talk to the workers, want to understand what their life is like. This is fascinating because these guys who work hard, they're doing an 18-hour shift, and they're also very happy and absolutely welcoming to us and delightful in a very hot, hard environment as far as I'm concerned.
Here in Cuba, the state gives each person an allotment of bread. These guys make the bread for the thousands living in this neighborhood. Many of these guys have been working here for 15 or more years. They make between $20 and $25 a month.
It's past midnight right now, and they have been working since 8 a.m. yesterday, actually, and we'll be working till 6 in the morning. By then, they'll have finished 15,000 rolls of bread.
Cuba's commitment to feeding its 11 million citizens is a point of great pride here, and you don't see the level of hunger you have in some other countries in the region. So I decided to visit several state stores to check them out.
Queso, picadillo, salchicha, pollo, Vedado. Lo demás es la canasta básica.
Everyone here in Cuba gets a ration book. It doesn't matter where you are on the economic scale. Even if you have a good amount of money or you have no money, you get the basic necessities taken care of. Eggs, oil, there are some meats, juice for the children, rice, beans, a very small portion of coffee, not enough for me.
While everyone gets these staples, it isn't enough to live on. There are also state-run markets, and for decades the state ran all the restaurants too. So the government had its hand in essentially everything you ate.
For years here in Cuba, the state ran all the restaurants. So if you wanted a plate of food like this, you know, the state supplied the chicken, the state supplied the rice, all the ingredients were supplied by the state. If you wanted pork, the state slaughtered the pigs, the state workers served it to you, everything was state-run.
The government had a monopoly on the food industry until the early 1990s. Then that all changed when two events collided. Cuba had its worst economic collapse in memory, and a Brazilian soap opera captivated Cubans. Here's how it went down. When the Soviet Union fell, it took Cuba's economy with it. Russian subsidies and imports vanished almost overnight. Food became so scarce that some Cubans dropped 20 pounds in that era. As Cubans were doing all they could to survive, they became mesmerized by a Brazilian soap opera called Vale Tudo. The fictional character Raquel was in a dead-end job until someone encouraged her to bake. Then she started her own restaurant called Paladar. Soon, she became a great success.
Conta logo, criatura, pelo amor de Deus! 120 sanduíches e não sobrou nenhum!
Some Cubans saw this character take a hold of her destiny and they thought, we want to do that too. And Cubans across the country started informal restaurants in their homes and called them paladares. So many popped up that the government finally had to allow them and then regulate them. They were family-owned with family pride, better food and service than any state-run restaurant, and since they were in people's own homes, they had low startup costs. Then, just a few years ago, Raul Castro loosened regulations further, enabling entrepreneurs to start private restaurants. And now they're opening up everywhere, like one of my favorites called El Café. El Café came to my rescue when I first faced the reality that Cuban sandwiches, like the kind I grew up with in Miami, don't actually exist here in Cuba. I talked with Nelson, the owner, about his food and what it's been like starting a restaurant here.
Do you want to tell me the ingredients to your pulled pork sandwich?
Yeah.
The recipe?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Pork, garlic. You say the recipe. Pork, garlic.
Is that Nelson's version of a Cuban sandwich?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's quite different. It's I think it's a modern.
El Café's Cuban sandwich.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what have some of the challenges been?
I think get good vegetable fruit, it's quite difficult to get stuff here in Cuba.
Nelson tells me he's kept his menu simple so that he can use ingredients he can find instead of relying on the black market, which is what most restaurants are forced to do here. Ingredients are one of the trickiest factors about running a restaurant business in Cuba. For instance, while Cuba is an island, seafood is a challenge to get here. There are limiting laws on selling it, so restaurants often have to have a black market fish guy. And though fish is listed in the ration notebook, no one I talked with has ever gotten it. Beef is even more difficult to get. You can be sentenced to 4 to 10 years in prison for killing a cow, so Cubans eat a lot of pork. Yet, there are entrepreneurs who are countering this, and a whole farm-to-table movement is emerging in Cuba. They don't term it as such, and it's not done as a trend, but it is changing the Cuban menus and how Cubans eat. I meet up with an entrepreneur named Uni who is ultimately helping Cubans reimagine their diet by connecting them to their source of food.
Y entonces esa nueva relación con la tierra te da alegría. Es una forma diferente de vivir.
Uni and her team seem to draw on that Cuban spirit that turns limitations into assets.
Las necesidades económicas que hay en nuestro país, sino que utilizamos los vegetales de todas las formas posibles, ¿no?
Finally, I head to El Cocinero, a pioneer in the private restaurant sector. And Sasha Ramos, one of its founders, happens to be no run-of-the-mill entrepreneur. He's a modern-day Robinson Crusoe, a poet and a pioneer.
Cuando creamos El Cocinero, pensamos en que era nuestra oportunidad de hacer algo importante en la vida. Hoy nos estamos dando cuenta que sí, que estamos cambiando la visión de la gastronomía cubana. No trampa de turista, no Buena Vista Social Club.
El Cocinero looks like it could be in New York or Milan, but this has been no small feat to pull off here.
No podemos tener platos, como digamos el plato como tal físico o el vaso o el tenedor iguales para todo el restaurante, pero es parte de lo que le aporta el carisma a la gastronomía cubana.
Sasha and the rest of the Cuban entrepreneurs don't have access to wholesalers and other resources that U.S. restaurants rely on.
El negocio de restaurante ha creado muchos negocios paralelos, ha hecho crecer otros sectores del emprendimiento, como hoy en día hay fincas que distribuyen los vegetales frescos, los animales orgánicos, los productos que necesitamos que en un principio no teníamos.
Sasha and other entrepreneurs in this country seem to have two missions. They have a sense of responsibility to them and their families to provide for them economically, and also to other entrepreneurs and Cuba in general. They want to make sure that their businesses succeed so they can prove that entrepreneurship and private business is an opportunity to grow this country and provide for the future.